seattleboatdetailing.com. Hey guys, thanks for joining me on today's video. We're going over a 2004 Maxum 2000 SR3 boat detail. This was a complete detail, and here's kind of the after video, just showing a nice glossy reflective gel coat, all the clean and protected vinyl. And then this is the before video. This was my walk around, just kind of showing how it's really oxidized in the blue right there. You can see it's almost turned white. You can't really tell as much, but the white gel coat is also pretty flat and dull. There's a little bit of water staining along the bottom edge. On this boat, there's a little the old vinyl lettering that says Maxum right here. You can barely see it probably, but that's going to get removed as part of this video as well. And the vinyl in the boat's fairly grimy and dirty. It's just a little bit overdue for cleaning, so we're going to take care of that as well. So the first thing here is I'm just using some acetone to get rid of some black scuffing, getting it just on the fiberglass and being careful to avoid the vinyl. Next, I'm going to put some FSR, which is a rust remover, onto that rust right in the box that's on the back near the swim step. While I'm doing the detail, I can let that do its work. I'm just going to put a little bit on my towel, rub it right onto, and do its magic. Alright, in this next section, I'm just getting right into the polishing. So I started out by doing this blue section, rubbing on some heavy-duty oxidation remover by McGuire's, working it in by hand, and then polishing it out. This is basically a compound. It's an abrasive. It's used to remove heavy oxidation, dullness, flatness, lack of shine, and bring those back into the gel coat. Get it nice and glossy, shiny, and reflective again. So I'm polishing this piece at the actual speed it's done, and then after I give you this little example, I'm just going to speed it back up, because once you've seen it, it gets boring. So anyway, there's the 6 times the speed. As you can see here, after just a couple passes with that really abrasive compound, the shine and gloss have been brought back into this. This will get polished one more time with Flagship Premium and Diamond Cut compound. We kind of do a mix of those two to do a final cut of any swirls or scratches created by that heavier compound, and then also to leave a nice protected glossy finish. So a question I hear a lot is, how much pressure should I put on the machine? And my answer to that is, I want the weight of the machine to be appropriate to the area I'm working. So if I'm on a flat surface like this, I'm going to set the machine on and I'm going to let it do the work. I'm going to basically just guide the machine and protect from it kicking or grabbing. When I'm down on an edge like this, since that surface is way less than the full head of the machine, I want to imagine the weight of the machine if it were just that big, and that's the weight I want to put in that area. So essentially I'm holding the machine here in that line. I'm not pressing, and I'm actually holding, let's say, 80% of the weight of the machine, and just letting about 20% of the machine rest on that small edge that I'm going to work now. Okay, and then just one pass out and then one pass back. When I'm compounding on a very small edge, that's probably going to be what it takes. It may be a second pass out and back, but you've got to watch what's happening and move carefully, slowly, and just pay attention. I also tend to feather the trigger on these small edges.
Of the machine spinning. Then once I've got the compound made to work, then I'm going to bring it up higher speed just to buff off and polish down that residual compound. So I'm hoping the camera's picking this up. Even though this back blue stripe is not oxidized hardly at all relative to the side, it's still very white and oxidized down on its bottom edge, which is why I'm still compounding it. If you compare it to this, it's not as bad as this, but it's still got some of that whiteness to it. So that's why I'm going to do that.
So in this clip, you probably saw me working around that hardware and the handle and things. Just got to be super careful around that stuff. It can definitely grab the machine and suck it into that if you're hitting it on the wrong side of the machine or you don't have a light enough touch. You just always want to be very conscientious when buffing around things, bumping into things. In that last shot, especially the handle, that particular handle is like a vinyl or something. If the edge of the pad of the machine hits that, it'll kind of burn into that and leave a bunch of fibers in the handle. And you just want to avoid that kind of thing. Alright, so you may have noticed me putting some product right down onto the surface in these little lines. I do that to really get the product directed exactly where I want it, especially where there's this angle that goes right under the 2000 SR3. On that little line, it's really hard to put the product on your pad and then get it right down in that groove or edge. So I'll always put polish into those sharp edges to make sure that I'm not buffing there with a dry pad, because that's going to lead to burning. And then also I'm doing around that little hardware, kind of with the tip of the buffer. When you're doing hardware, you got to definitely be careful. The rotation of the buffer head. If you come into a piece of hardware on the wrong side, sometimes it'll create what's called a bite, or spin the machine into that piece of hardware, kicking the machine and potentially breaking things or hurting you. So you just want to be aware of kind of the angle of the spin and making sure you're working the machine properly around anything that sticks out and can grab onto the head there. True story, I had a buffer kick me in the face one time when I was polishing a semi years ago, and basically I let the machine hit something. My body and my face was directly above what I was buffing, and it bit that thing that I hit. The buffer spun, the handle clocked me right in the mouth. Basically I almost lost a tooth and almost had a hole through my lip. So definitely not a fun day. Be careful. You can definitely get hurt quickly and easily. So think about what you're doing. Keep your body away from the machine. Just keep a handle on things. Keep a light touch on things as much as possible, and be ready for kickback, and be ready to, get off of the trigger and pull away the buffer as needed. Kind of along those same lines, most of these machines, well, all of my machines, have a trigger lock. And when I'm working these top small edges, I generally will not use the trigger lock. If I'm down in a big wide open surface, like down there on the hull, and I'm working a big area, then I'll sometimes use a trigger lock. On small boats like this though, I think generally I just don't. If this was, a 68-foot Nordic tug or, something huge, then yeah, I'd be using the trigger lock if I had very large sections of hull to do.
Everybody like your pictures?
While we're on the topic of safety, notice I'm wearing headphones right here, rocking out a little bit. Oh yeah, having a good time. But I wear those even also just to kind of keep the noise down from the machine. Just listening to that buffer all day, one's gonna bug you eventually, but mainly it's just not good for your ears. So I've went many years without ear protection, and having the music on my ears over that, maybe not the best thing either, but definitely use something either way. So this pass is going to be right along that rub rail, and I think this is speeded up so you can't really tell, but when I ran that bead of product down, I went right onto the very lip of the rub rail. And I do that intentionally because dry pad on that rub rail, not this particular boat so much because this fiberglass kind of curves right over the top, but most small boats, the rub rail is just right there, and if you don't put some product down on it, your pad will basically burn into it. So definitely an area to watch and put product on to keep wet. All right, in this back area, there's a couple different things going on. First off, it was fairly oxidized. It's white, so it's hard to see in this shot. But first off, I went my normal pattern left to right, side to side, overlapping, and then dropping down about a quarter or a third pad width, then doing that same thing right to left. After doing that, I then did a cross pattern. So up and down, side to side, overlapping. And basically any moderate to heavy oxidized areas, you want to do a cross pattern. So you get really good polishing coverage, and so you truly get as much of the oxidation out as you can. If you don't do a cross pattern on boats that are really oxidized, a lot of times you'll get just a patchy or splotchy kind of look to it, depending on what angle you look at it once you're done. So in this particular square that I'm doing, I really worked down that product all the way down to the end. So it may have seemed like a long time that I was on that, but I'm always watching what's happening on the surface. Can I see product still making a difference as I'm going over it? Is there an area that it's not affecting while I'm going over it? That's kind of how you tell if you need to stop polishing or add more product. So something to always consider. A lot of different angles on this particular one. Super important to be careful when working an area like this. It looks pretty smooth and easy, but there's definitely some hard edges that the buffer can run into if you're not careful. So make sure to really get areas like this that are concave, well put material on them, so you don't dry out or hit an edge with that buffing pad. All right, now I'm just catching the bottom edge of the swim step. It's a little 1-inch lip that kind of goes around the outside. Don't want to miss that. And right back into the small, tight, confined spaces. Here you just want to do the best you can. Make sure to get some product put in those edges, both on the bottom and on the left and right, where the two angles meet. Very sensitive and very hard to not damage here. Working in a tight area, the buffer's going to get kicked around a little bit if you're not careful. Definitely light on the trigger and ready to back off immediately, and just really got to watch exactly what you're doing and not just continue to try and get it. If the buffer head doesn't fit in that space, accept it, stop polishing, move on. You can see right there I had to come back through by hand and just wipe the rest of it out because I could not get to it. Sometimes when you're new or just inexperienced, you get impatient, you start trying to force the buffer to do things it just is not going to do. So definitely be aware of that and be careful. Otherwise you'll end up burning and being frustrated and damaging things. Alright, so down to the hull. At this point, just doing the white primarily and then going back for a second pass over the blue. I don't know if I'm going to do that right now, or yeah, I'm kind of staying out of the blue right now. Typically, I'll try to do all the white first. That way, my pad, if it gets oxidation or discoloration on it from dark colors like this blue, I won't bring that into the white. So yeah, there you go. So this is a second pass on the blue. Already got off the majority of the oxidation, and I'm just adding some protection and some fine polishing to make it perfect. Alright, in this portion, I'm going to use a heat gun to remove the backing of the original Maxum logo. It was kind of like a two-part deal where there was something on top of this the owner pulled off, and he thought he got everything. When I got here, I realized that there's still actually kind of a vinyl or a sticker on this boat. So I'm coming in with a heat gun, heating it up, lifting just the front edge with a razor blade, and then applying heat to the part that's still stuck to it as I'm pulling away. And as you do that, it kind of just gets unstuck. And hopefully you end up getting 100% of the sticker off each time you work it that way. Now if you point the heat gun back toward the part that's already been lifted, it's going to heat that too much and it's going to tear or stretch and then break. So you want to just keep the heat again on the part that's still stuck to the boat as you're peeling away the little piece that you've got lifted off, and just keep working down to the right like I am. You also want to be careful about not overheating. This heat gun has two settings, low and high. This is a very cold day. It's still like 45 degrees out probably only. So I'm using high heat. I'm about maybe half an inch to an inch away from the vinyl. I'm continuing to move side to side to get it nice and warmed up. And then I'll start that edge with the razor blade and then come in behind that and just release the gun down in front of the section that I've already pulled off. Again, just kind of keep an eye on that gel coat. If you ever see it turn yellow or brown, it's burning. Immediately remove the heat and back off, because once it's burned, it is burned. And as far as I know, nothing you can really do about that. You might be able to wet sand it out. Never tried, but that's the only thing you might be able to do. And even that's questionable. Alright, in this section, I'm kind of just using the heat to warm up any remaining glue, and then trying to be as careful as I can, sliding the razor blade across to just remove that glue. This is one way to do that, and this is definitely not the safe way to do that. You can gouge the fiberglass doing this, and it's really not recommended. Basically, once the vinyl is removed, best bet, grab some solvent like an acetone or anything else that you know of that's safe for fiberglass. Acetone is what I used here later on, eventually. But yeah, you just want to clean the rest of the gum off. And then, of course, anytime you use a solvent or a chemical on fiberglass, you want to wax it. So even if you're not doing what I did with this boat, which was a full exterior polish and wax, if you remove some vinyl after doing it, you're always going to want to either compound, cleaner wax, or apply, just regular sealant or wax if there's not oxidation around where the lettering came off. And the only time that's going to be the case is if your boat is basically brand new, because as soon as your boat is not new, you will begin to get oxidation. And if you've had any lettering that's been removed off anything that's, unless literally brand new, you will see a difference. You'll see what's called ghosting, and that's kind of just that really clean area where the vinyl came off versus the other area surrounding it that's somewhat or heavily oxidized. As far as that goes, there's a couple different things you can do for that ghosting. A lot of boats you can just get away with compounding and then polishing, which is exactly what I did on this boat. If it's been on there, the vinyl's been on there for quite a while, the ghosting can be severe if the oxidation is. In that case, sometimes you'll actually have to wet sand that out first, then polish it to get really down to where you don't see any ghosting anymore. And that is for another video. And once again, the finished product. This detail was about a 10-hour detail. So top to bottom, front to back. The only thing we didn't do in this particular job was the carpets. The owner said that he was okay with the way they were and didn't really need us to do anything. But we did everything else. So there you have it. Hey, if you like this video, be sure to smash the like button, hit the subscribe, and leave us a comment. As always, thanks for watching, and make it a great day.